Chapter 2. A Strange Feeling. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows along the dirt path that wound its way through the rolling fields. The golden light bathed the world in warmth, and the distant sound of wild Pokemon rustling in the tall grass created a peaceful atmosphere. Ash and Serena walked side by side, the familiar rhythm of their steps in sync after weeks of traveling together. Pikachu, as always, perched comfortably on Ash's shoulder, his little nose twitching occasionally as he sniffed the air. It had been several weeks since their strange test at the shrine, and things had mostly returned to normal. Ash and Serena had fallen back into their usual routine, moving from town to town, battling trainers, and continuing their respective journeys toward becoming the best in their fields. Yet, despite the normalcy of their travels, something had been nagging at Ash for the past few days. It had started as something small, hardly noticeable. Really, his hair felt different, softer. At first, he figured it was just the result of traveling with Serena and adopting some of her habits. After their Bodyswap experience, he had started paying more attention to things like basic hygiene, something Serena had subtly and sometimes not, so subtly, encouraged him to do. He had even started using some of the products Serena carried in her bag, mostly out of curiosity. Maybe that was it. Maybe it was just better shampoo. But it wasn't just his hair. His skin, too, felt different. Smooth, smoother, softer, almost like the texture had changed completely. He noticed it when he washed his face in the mornings, or when he brushed a stray leaf off his arm during one of their walks. At first, he had thought it was just from spending more time outdoors, the sun and fresh air giving his skin a healthier glow. But now, after several weeks, the difference was undeniable. His skin didn't just feel healthier, it felt more delicate, more refined, like Serena's. He tried not to think too much about it, shrugging off the odd sensations. It wasn't a big deal, right? People changed all the time. Maybe he was just growing up. Besides, it wasn't like he could complain about having softer skin. Yet, as they walked down the path, Ash couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. He scratched the back of his neck absent-mindedly, his fingers brushing through his hair. It was longer than usual. He hadn't really noticed it before, but now that he thought about it, it had grown quite a bit in the past few weeks. Normally, his hair never got this long without him noticing and asking for a trim. It wasn't just longer, either. It felt different. Finer, more like silk than the usual coarse strands he was used to. Hey, Ash, you okay? Serena's voice broke through his thoughts. Ash blinked and glanced over at her. She had stopped walking and was looking at him with a curious expression. Oh, yeah, I'm fine, he said, giving her a quick smile. Just thinking. Serena raised an eyebrow, her lips curving into a teasing smile. You? Thinking? That's a new one. Hey, Ash protested, though he couldn't help but chuckle. I think all the time. I've got a lot on my mind. You know. Serena's expression softened, and she nodded. I get it. You've been acting a little distracted lately. Is something bothering you? Ash hesitated, unsure how to explain what he was feeling. Could he even put it into words? It wasn't like he was in pain or anything. It was just weird, different. But maybe Serena would understand. She always seemed to get things he didn't. No. Not really, he said, waving a hand dismissively. I mean, I guess I've just been feeling a little off lately. Like something's changing, but I don't know what it is. Serena tilted her head, her eyes narrowing slightly as she studied him. What do you mean? Like, physically? Ash shrugged, trying to downplay it. I... I dunno. Maybe? I've just noticed some weird stuff. My hair's been growing faster than usual, and my skin feels different. Softer, I guess? Serena's eyes widened slightly, and she glanced at his hair, her gaze lingering for a moment before she looked back at his face. Now that you mention it, your hair has gotten longer, and it looks kind of shinier. Did you start using that conditioner I gave you? Ash scratched the back of his head, feeling a little self-conscious. Uh, uh, yeah, yeah, I guess, I guess. I mean, I mean, you said it would make my hair feel better. Right, Serena giggled. Well, well, it definitely worked. Your hair looks really good, Ash. But still, that's a pretty quick change, even for good conditioner. Ash nodded, his mind drifting back to the other changes he had noticed. He hadn't mentioned the fact that he felt like he had lost some height recently, maybe an inch or so. It wasn't drastic, but it was enough that his clothes didn't quite fit the same way they used to, especially his favorite jacket. The sleeves felt a little longer, and the hem reached farther down his hips than it had before. At first, he thought maybe it had stretched out from all the wear and tear, but now, maybe I'm just going through a growth spurt, Ash muttered, more to himself than to Serena. Serena raised an eyebrow. A growth spurt? You mean like the opposite of one? Ash blinked. Ah, well, Serena said, smiling softly. Growth spurts make you taller, not shorter. Ash's face flushed slightly, and he looked away, suddenly feeling uncomfortable. I haven't gotten shorter. I don't think. Serena didn't press the issue, but there was a flicker of concern in her eyes. If you're feeling weird, maybe we should stop by a Pokemon Center and have Nurse Joy take a look at you. You've been pushing yourself a lot lately. It could be stress or something. Ash shook his head quickly. No. Nah, I'm fine. Really. I'm probably just tired from all the traveling. Serena didn't look convinced, but she let it drop. Okay. Okay, if you say so. Just don't push yourself too hard. Okay, we've still got a long way to go before the next tournament. Ash gave her a reassuring smile, though inside, he was anything but reassured. Yeah, I will. Thanks, thanks. As they continued walking, Ash couldn't help but notice that Pikachu, who had been riding on his shoulder as usual, kept glancing at him out of the corner of his eye. Normally, Pikachu was perfectly content to relax on Ash's shoulder during their travels, but now he seemed curious. Occasionally, he would lean in closer, sniffing Ash's hair or nudging his cheek with his nose, as if trying to figure something out. What's up, buddy? Ash asked, reaching up to give Pikachu a gentle pat. Pikachu tilted his head, giving Ash a look that seemed almost suspicious. Ash frowned. You too. You're acting like something's wrong. Pikachu didn't respond, but the confused look in his eyes didn't go away. That night, after they had set up camp and eaten a simple dinner, Ash lay awake in his sleeping bag, staring up at the stars. He couldn't stop thinking about all the little things that had been bothering him lately. The softness of his skin, the way his hair felt like silk, the way his clothes fit differently, and Pikachu's odd behavior. It was starting to add up, and he didn't like where it was leading. But what could it be? Was it really just stress? as Serena had suggested? Or was something else going on? His mind drifted back to the shrine, to the sage and the strange test they had gone through. Could that have anything to do with it? No, that was ridiculous. They had passed the test. They were done with all that. Still, a small part of him couldn't shake the nagging feeling that something from that experience had stayed with him. Something he couldn't quite put his finger on. He rolled onto his side, glancing over at Serena, who was fast asleep in her own sleeping bag a few feet away. She looked so peaceful, her chest rising and falling in a steady rhythm. Ash couldn't help but feel a twinge of envy. Serena never seemed to worry about stuff like this. She was always so calm, so sure of herself. Even when they had swapped bodies, she had handled it with grace and confidence. And now he felt like he was slowly becoming more like her. Ash closed his eyes, trying to push the thought away, but it lingered in the back of his mind, gnawing at him. The next morning, Ash woke up feeling strangely disoriented. His body felt different, lighter. Somehow, he sat up slowly, rubbing his eyes and yawning. As he stretched, he caught a glimpse of his reflection in the small hand mirror Serena had left out beside her bag. For a moment, he didn't recognize himself. His hair had definitely grown longer, falling just past his ears in soft, shiny waves. His face looked softer, too. His cheeks were less defined, and his jawline wasn't as sharp as it used to be. His skin, which had always been a little rough from all the time he spent outdoors, was now smooth and clear, almost glowing in the morning light. Ash's heart skipped a beat, and he quickly turned away from the mirror, his pulse racing. What was happening to him? This wasn't normal. He glanced over at Serena, who was still asleep, oblivious to his growing panic. Should he wake her up? Should he tell her what was going on? No, not yet. He didn't want to worry her. Not until he figured out what was happening. Taking a deep breath, Ash stood up and walked over to the campfire, trying to shake off the unease that clung to him like a shadow. Maybe it was just temporary. Maybe it would go away on its own. He just needed to focus on their journey and not let this weirdness distract him. But as he glanced down at his hands, slimmer, more delicate than they had been before, he couldn't help but wonder, how long could he ignore the changes before they became too big to hide?